Untuk bisa berdiri di sini, banyak perjuangan yang saya lewati. Keberhasilan saya tidak lepas dari dorongan dan dukungan orang-orang terdekat saya. Juga lingkungan yang membantu saya menjadi pemenang. Pilihan memang selalu beragam, tetapi kecepatan, fasilitas, dan inovasi cerdas selalu jadi prioritas.
Aku akan langkah dan cetak masa depan bersama Hanabe.
Vector, Indonesian-born global contribution.
Mohon perhatian Anda. Sesi selanjutnya akan segera dimulai. Bagi para peserta, diharapkan untuk menuju ke ruangan sesi selanjutnya. Terima kasih.
Your attention, please. The next session will be starting soon. To all participants, please continue to the next session room. Thank you.
Selamat siang, saya Danya Cokrowardi, anak SMA. Saya bagian dari generasi instan. I'm actually a lot of other things, but that's the only introduction that's important because the only reason why what I'm saying today is important is that. Generasi instan. Mungkin awal didengar kita agak jengkel gitu ya, tapi mau disangkal juga ya bener. Kayak instan, investasi bodong. Cinta instan, Tinder. Makanan instan, Indomie. Mungkin memang benar kita generasi instan. Tapi ada gak sih yang pernah nanya, kenapa? Kenapa kita sebegitu tidak sabar? Kenapa kita menggapai mimpi aja buru-buru? Ya mau gimana lagi kalau memang kita udah gak ada waktu, gak ada kepastian. Bencana, pandemi, resesi, krisis setelah krisis setelah krisis. Kalau kata orang dahulu, berakit-rakit ke hulu, berenang-renang ke tepian, bersakit-sakit dahulu, bersenang-senang kemudian. Tapi apakah dunia akan hidup untuk nungguin mimpi kita? Kalau kita sudah berakit ke hulu, sudah berenang ke tepi, lalu tenggelam, bagaimana? Waktu dan kepastianlah yang sudah tidak kita miliki. Waktu dan kepastianlah yang sudah dirampas oleh krisis iklim, yang sudah kita rampas dari diri kita sendiri. I'm no scientist. I'm not a politician. I'm a student. And that's the biggest significance I have towards the climate crisis. I have dreams. Saya ingin menjadi menteri. Tapi bekerja keras pun siapa yang bisa menjamin ketika es di kutub meleleh takkan ada pandemi lagi yang meruntuhkan semua kerja keras belajar saya. Saya ingin menikah, berkeluarga, tapi siapa yang bisa menjamin kepada saya bahwa udara yang dihirup anak saya akan bersih, bahwa rumah anak saya tidak akan tenggelam atau runtuh diguncang gempa. Terbentuknya generasi instan merupakan cerminan dari apa yang akan hilang. Jadi sekarang, kalau dikatain generasi instan, bukan lagi jengkel, tapi sedih, putus asa. But I have hope. Karena selain generasi instan, kita juga generasi teknologi. Semakin hari semakin banyak inovasi, semakin banyak penemuan, semakin banyak riset dan solusi untuk menanggulangi krisis iklim. Namun bagi saya, dan banyak anak muda lain di sini, teknologi ini bukan sekedar inovasi, bukan sekedar solusi, tapi diiringi kehendak dan orang-orang yang tepat, teknologi bisa menjadi alat dan penyelamat yang merampas balik waktu, masa depan, dan kepastian bagi kita. But solutions are slow. It's not going to be tomorrow. We're all working together, so we should celebrate our successes. We should console and solve our losses together. But remember, it really is now or never. Terima kasih.
Halo, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. Salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Good afternoon. I'm Rini Sucahyo and I'm from Ember Climate. I'm the Asia Communication Manager at Ember Climate. And probably teman-teman di sini bacanya Ember, but it's actually Ember. And we are actually an independent non-profit global energy think tank. Dedicated to driving the electricity transition to a clean electricity using the power of data. And through our data insights, we are aiming to increase conversation as well as shift conversation towards high-impact policy, and also empower advocates like yourselves to actually drive the change. So that's a little about me. And about this session, so throughout the day, I've heard about achieving net zero. So achieving net zero, it is crucial for all countries, including Indonesia. The urgency of this goal lies in the need to limit global warming to well below 1.5 degrees Celsius, above pre-industrial levels, as outlined in the Paris Agreement. To accomplish this, technology and innovation have an important role to play. The Indonesian government, though, thankfully, has begun to take steps and issue policies to encourage the use of various technologies, starting from the electrification of the transportation systems, also the development of smart system in the power plant, to battery technologies. Indonesia's choices, though, will also play a vital role in achieving net zero. By 2050, to succeed, we must prioritize the adoption and deployment of true solutions or true mitigation options. So together with the initiators in this field, this session, the Tech to Net Zero, which are the true solutions, will discuss the various options currently available, which of them are truly the solutions to achieve net zero, and explore the opportunity for collaborations. So, without further ado, I would like to call to stage our esteemed panelists. First of all is Professor Tatsuya Watanabe from area. Hello, Professor. Please take a seat. Anywhere. And then secondly is Bapak Anindya Bakri, President Commissioner of PT Vektor Teknologi Mobilitas Utama. And then we also have Ibu Dr. Marlistia Citraningrum atau Ibu Citra, Program Manager for Sustainable Energy Access from Institute of Essential Services Reform or IESR. And last but certainly not least, Bapak Leonard Simanjuntak, Country Director of Greenpeace Indonesia. Oke. Selamat sore Bapak-bapak dan Ibu. Terima kasih sudah hadir di sini. So our session today will be fully in English. I'll try to moderate slowly so everybody can understand. So we're going to start with our first question. And my question today is for you, Professor Watanabe. So I'm wondering, what do you think are the best and most adaptable decarbonization technologies for Indonesia, considering our unique landscapes?
Thank you very much. First of all, I'm not sure today I'm dressed properly. I'm sorry, but it's just formal. But Indonesia, I'm Japanese, obviously, but we all live in the region with some of the strongest economic growth of the world. But there are downsides of it. Of course, our economies, Indonesian economies expand, but so do our needs, energy needs, which resulted in increased emissions. In Indonesia, previous panelists already discussed, but almost 87% of energy mix coming from using fossil fuel. 60% are coming from coal-fired power plants. That's a reality, and Indonesia has a long way to go toward achieving the net zero. But fortunately, Indonesia has abundant renewable energy resources, solar, wind, geothermal. But shifting to the renewables requires a huge investment, and it takes time. We must, so of course, advances are being made on different fronts, on all fronts, but we must start reducing emissions now, as soon as possible, now. There are many promising transition technologies. First is, of course, for example, from coal to natural gas, and waste to energy, and leak detection for emission reduction. That is number one, sort of early decarbonization transition technology. That's the first category of technology. Number two is partial emission reduction technology, like co-combustion, mixing coal with biomass, and ammonia, mixing gas with hydrogen. We also suggest electrification in gas production. That's the second category of transition technologies. Lastly, sort of a deep decarbonization transition technology, which can happen at any point in this country toward a net zero pathway. This includes CCUS, carbon capture utilization and storage, blue hydrogen, ammonia production, also development of smart cities, and the implementation of circular economy practices and social models. It is our belief that a comprehensive and phased approach will enable Indonesia and us to navigate the complexity of a decarbonization goal effectively. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. So from Professor Watanabe, we learned that Indonesia still needs to develop economically, and our energy mix still consists of 60% of coal, and so we have a long way to go to shift to renewables. And shifting to renewables needs a lot of investment and also a lot of time. And some of the technologies that Professor Watanabe says that would help Indonesia to achieve decarbonization quickly would include like a combination of still using coal, like mixing coal with biomass or ammonia and hydrogen. There's also CCUS, green hydrogen, and also developing smart cities. And so that's really interesting, Professor, because yeah, many experts, I'm not an expert, by the way, so many experts have argued that such technologies are unproven and have actually warned against encouraging governments to become over-reliant on such technologies. But I'm going to go to the expert, which is Ibu Chitra. If I could go to you first, Ibu Chitra, and ask you what your thoughts are, which technologies and approaches are more inclusive, but not only that, easily deployable and therefore easily accessible in Indonesia.
All right, thank you, Mbak Rini. First of all, hello. Before answering the question, I have a confession to make. So usually my partner picks my clothes because I have zero fashion sense. And today he suggested that I should wear something that's more formal to respect all the panelists here, but I choose this t-shirt because I want to make a statement. So we in ISR believes that we can achieve zero, not net zero, zero emission by 2050. And then we have to have stronger calls on that. Techno-economically, we can achieve zero emission by 2050. Of course, with a lot of requirements and thoughts and planning, and of course, help from numerous stakeholders, not only the government, private sector, CSOs, but also everyone in this room today to make the call and demand that we can have that target. So, zero emission 2050, please remember that. And to answer your questions about what type of technology that Indonesia can employ to achieve this target, I have to state that Indonesia's energy transition right now is not a true transition. It's more of energy addition rather than energy transition, because we have yet to retire coal power plants. We have yet to make a lot of renewables coming to shift from that fossil fuel-based energy system. So we need to think more in an ambitious way and employ a lot of technological advance. As the high school student mentioned previously, they want something that's really fast. They're also of digital and technological advances that we can always use to make the energy transition faster. And based on our calculation, if we want to get the zero emission by 2050, we can always employ the plentiful solar energy that we have, coupled with storage, coupled with grid integration between our archipelagic countries, and also to promote more decentralized energy system. Because that's energy transition is all about. It's no longer one big power plant somewhere, but it's more smaller power plants run by the community, run by smaller companies, run by cooperatives even, so that we can finally fulfill the energy access needed by Indonesian with clean energy sources, decentralized one, solar energy, mini, micro hydro, maybe some big geothermal as well, but we believe that Indonesia have all the resources, and with all the helps and cooperation that we can get, we can achieve zero emission by 2050.
Thank you, Ibu Citra. Yeah, I think that's a really important point. Indonesia have a lot of energy sources that are renewables. One of which is solar, of course. We don't need to be a scientist to know that. We just need to step outside and feel the sun. But yeah, before I go to the next question, maybe if Professor Watanabe, do you want to respond to Ibu Citra?
Yeah, I think we must have all solutions on the table, and of course different technology and different development stage, and some technology are unproven and maybe costly, but now I mean deployment is actually happening. So government and investors and companies and experts are coming together and try different technology on various fronts. Of course, communication and engagement with various stakeholders are critical, but I stop here.
Okay, thank you. Well, Ibu Citra also mentioned one important point is the fact that we all need to collaborate, so multi-stakeholders collaboration. We need everyone to participate. We need everyone to be involved and contribute from all sectors and stakeholders. So the private sector is one sector that plays a pivotal role in this case, especially by driving innovation, research, and development. So my next question would be for you, Pak Anindya. Hello. Your company has been investing in and developing cutting-edge technologies in the transportation sector, including battery technology. So what do you think is the private sector's role in this case in advancing technology for climate actions?
Thank you very much for the opportunity indeed, and congratulations, Pak Dino. It is an honor to be here. He gave me one advice before coming here: don't disappoint me. I'll try my best. But anyway, look, we're all here trying to solve a 21st century problem. That's climate change. It's not a simple thing. Nevertheless, I think Indonesia has a chance to be the mecca of decarbonization. I'll tell you why. So, challenges big, for sure. And for the younger generation, this is a chance to actually make a difference. Now, below the ground, Indonesia has all the critical materials we need for decarbonization. We talk about nickel, #1 in the world, tin, #2, copper, #7, so we're good, right? Above the ground, with technology, we have renewable energy potential to the tune of 500 gigawatt, with technology and of course money. And around us, we have biodiversity that can contribute to maybe 100 gigatons of CO2 capture. So we can be the mecca of decarbonization, but it's not going to be easy and we cannot do it alone, indeed, right? So I think we should take that with us as a challenge and an opportunity. And I think this is a chance for Indonesia to have its own industrial revolution, like what we see in the UK in the 19th century, in the US in the 20th century, so that this green industrial revolution can make Indonesia the electro state, the carbon state, as opposed to petro state like in the past, right? Now, what can private sector do in this? I think many, if you want, right? Two things, acceleration and scalability, right? One, I agree with you, Mbak, that research and innovation is something we have to do with a lot of parties, including academia, NGO, civil societies. And #2, this is what we do as an entrepreneur, is technology deployment and commercialization. Because we test the market, we see how it is, and then we improve it. And 3, of course, financing and investing is very important. And also, I think trying to spur collaboration and partnership is very important, not only locally, but internationally. Like Professor Watanabe here, he told me early this year, coming from Japan, leaving his very prestigious post to help Indonesia and ASEAN is a good thing, because we need a lot of help. And lastly, I think all of us need to do a little bit of public advocacy or business activism. So on our part, what do? We are a group of 81-year-old. Just like anybody else, we start from somewhere, and that somewhere is hydrocarbon. It's no secret, we know it. But having said that, we can actually try to do something for the future. And what we try to do is to do decarbonization in our own modest way, by way of electrifying public transportation, buses. Why transportation? Because it contributes to about 23% of the whole carbon emission. Why public transportation? Because it contributes 23% of that, right? And it's public. The good thing about public is that people use it, so people talk about it. So our first batch of buses in Jakarta here has transported 10 million people in 14 months. So we have a data that there are 5 people per kilometers with these buses than non-electric buses. So people actually wait for the buses. And we reduce about 5.5 million tons of CO2 emission, which is equal to 250,000 trees being planted, right? And then, of course, reducing the fuel subsidy from the government, because we're still net oil importer, and of course for the operator of the bus rapid transit itself. So it's an early days, because not many people know, in Jakarta itself, we have 10,000 buses. This is more than any city that we know, and this is exciting. And Indonesia is not Jakarta, we have more. Imagine if we can, to complete my initial, fire starter, we can process critical battery materials below the ground with green energy above the ground, and then even export energy and critical materials to the world. That's why our new venture called Vector is Indonesian Pride, the global contribution. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Anindya. Okay, so we have heard quite a few solutions so far, quite a few tech technologies from Professor Watanabe as well as from Mbak Citra and as well as Pak Anin. Pak Anin focuses on the transportation sector, especially electrifying public transportation, which is of course very important to reduce our CO2 emissions. And also Pak Anin mentioned that we can be the Mecca of decarbonization. So I'm really looking forward to that, and as well as making sure that it happens by 2050, Mbak Citra. All right, our next panelist is Pak Leonard Simanjuntak from Greenpeace Indonesia. So Pak Leo, obviously from our discussion today, we heard that collaboration is important. We need to put all solutions on the table. But I'm just wondering, what is your take on this? Like, do we have like a better solution, like true solution versus false solution? And if there are some false solution, how do we identify them, and whether with the right, with time and more research and research and development, is it possible that false can become right in the future?
Thank you, Ibu Rini. Yeah, that's a very intriguing question. Yes, I think we need to be very clear first that we need to achieve 1.5 degrees or well below 1.5 degrees. And our enhanced NDCs at the moment will lead us to, if extrapolate globally, to 4 degrees. The aggregate of NDCs at the moment globally will lead us to 2.8 degrees, catastrophic. So we need no less than, well, energy revolution, basically, which on this particular conversation, we need to be very consistent on the true solutions and get rid of the false solution. And what are the false solutions? Well, I'll start with the true solutions. And we all know that. It's solar and a massive solarization. We need to do that at the country level, but mostly I think we need to focus on the areas, the islands that are with the highest load, the peak load. They say the peak load. It's Java, Bali, and Sumatra. These 3 islands need to transform very significantly and going to renewables as soon as possible, as rapid as possible. We have the technology. We have the, I think the investment climate is going very well at the moment. We need the political will. Political will has been, how should I say, intermittent. It's stop and go. I mean, now, like with PLN instructing to stop net metering, then we are nowhere near the solution. And the false solution, well, we have in our pretty controversial new and renewable energy bill a couple of coal-based false solutions. There is coal gasification. This coal gasification, which is now being experimented in South Sumatra with the aim of replacing LPG, is the cost of it is nearly twice of cost producing LPGs. And it will go nowhere near the economic viability. Second, we also have in that bill coal liquefaction. Well, it's pretty hard even to spell that, but there is no proven technology. It will be very expensive to doing that. There is also coal bed methane. This is very old. This is very old technology, and it's now being labeled as new energy in that bill. And we have also another experiment of carbon capture and storage. If we go to the United States, who have been experimenting on this for, I think for at least a couple of decades now, it's failure after failure. It's too expensive, and if we talk about like CO2 emission capture, and this is kind of a if not hypocrisy, at least contradiction, because when they capture the CO2 and they put it back, particularly in oil and gas industry, it's called secondary oil recovery. I graduated from petroleum engineering, so I know this. So that's an old technology now being framed as CCS, very old technology. So that means it will make oil and gas industry live longer and produce even more oil to basically to produce more emission. So that's a bit, I think probably to kick off, there's a few of false and true solutions. Thank you, Marini.
All right. Thank you to all of our panelists. Right now, I want to hear from the audience. Actually, I still have questions, but our time is up. And so I'm going to take 2 questions at a time. And these guidelines, please follow it. So please raise your hand and then come forward. And a team member, and you can speak in the microphone. Please state your name and your institution, and also specify which panelist your question is addressed to. So let me start from that lady in the far corner there, Mbak. Yeah. And anyone from the back? I cannot see. Okay. Maybe that one? Mas? Yeah.
Okay, good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity. And my name is Benar-Benar Solusi. I'm for Budi Luhur University, and I want to ask a question to Professor Watanabe. So by how we need to speed up the energy transition by using more technologies, I want to ask your opinion on, do you think fossil fuel will still stay relevant until 10, until 50, or even 100 years later, even though it's not a good option to use it? And because by how maybe there are some controversies on whether to use it or not. And that's all my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe the second question?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dirvansya Guswiranadakunya. Can I ask something about, I want to ask one question to Professor Watanabe about, accelerating the transition process. Because, oh yeah, I remember.
Pakai bahasa boleh, nanti saya
Okay, maybe do you think there will be severe consequences for, sudden acceleration for energy transition in transforming the economic structure from petrol-based business structure to renewable energy resource, considering that the majority of chemical compounds is produced from the petrol industry? Has there been any advanced research for sudden change in the economical process?
Okay, is that your question already?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's the consequences of accelerating renewable energy and whether there's advanced research in the economic impact of acceleration. Okay, let's start with the first one first. Professor Watanabe. So the first one is whether fossil fuel is still relevant many, many years into the future.
I think what I said is, I mean, we have a common target, net zero, maybe 2050, or maybe 2050. You agree? But achieving the common shared target, we have different pathways and to achieve the common goal. And for example, developed countries like Europe, their economy is sort of, I mean, stable. But here, economic growth is like this. So it's a quite different. Economic situation and social situation are quite different. In the economy like this, you can replace fossil fuel to renewable, this kind of thing. But here in Indonesia, in Southeast Asia, economy is like this. So you need to replace this amount, not this big triangular. So that's a challenge. So, and we also need to reduce carbon emission from now. What can we do? Of course, we can deploy solar and wind, but 80% of or 60% of coal-fired plants. So we have to, in the transition process, we need to use that kind of plants. And their vintage is very young still. So how can we reduce the emission from this kind of fossil fuel using plants? That's a challenge. And then transition technologies comes in and help. I don't say that we should use the fossil fuel forever. That's not my argument. And for the accelerating energy transition, and is of course different technology, as I mentioned, that and different stage and development. But we need to understand how technologies works and how we can reduce the cost, and inviting investors and financial institutions. Even financial institutions are not quite familiar with this kind of transition technology. So then we need a communication and engagement with different stakeholders. Did I answer the question? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think if I can just summarize, so basically there are different pathways, and the end goal is still phasing out fossil fuels by 2050, but there are different pathways in order to get there. And of course, we can accelerate solar and wind, but we must also consider the fact that the 60% coal-based industry must also be considered when we're doing the transition to make sure that there's no adverse economic impact. Is that what you are saying? Okay. All right. Before I take two more questions, maybe, maybe Pak Leo and then Mbak Citra would like to respond.
Professor Watanabe, if I may challenge you on that increasing economic growth. Actually, we have been stagnant at 5% over the last 10 to 15 years. And that's the origin of all this miscalculation of electricity growth, which has led to oversupply, very serious oversupply problem that we are having now in Java and Bali, the islands which I earlier referred to, with the highest or the peak load of electricity, and essentially making it very difficult for renewable energy to grow, to expand. And that's, of course, always the excuse of PLN. But going back to your earlier statement, we are actually having a pretty stagnant 5% growth over the last decade or even more. So, so I think we should actually think about alternative development model based on renewable energies. There is Bappenas low carbon development model, which actually refers to 6.5 to 7% economic growth. If we are shifting radically to renewable energies and make this transition even more faster. Thank you.
All right. I will not challenge Professor Watanabe, but maybe offer a reflective questions for us all. Maybe we need to rethink the economy as something that's solely based on the energy resources. Because if we think about, this is the anecdote that we need 5,000 kilowatt hour per capita to be a modern and advanced country. But right now we have all the technological advances to be more efficient, industrially efficient, electronically efficient. We have a lot of electronics that are now, say, using half of the energy that it used to be in 10 or 5 years ago. And I think we need to calculate again how many energy that we need to be an advanced country, and we need to rethink how Indonesia actually have those local wisdom about doing economy, that we need to think back about the environment and etc. And it's not solely measured by the GDP or the energy consumption or otherwise, but on how we can grow together as a country that puts a lot of values into the environment, and how we do economics as a way of respecting our relation with the nature. Thank you.
Okay.
In this case, I will support you. I think, sorry, I beg to differ. I think 5% per year is very good. It is what you call compounding interest model, right? That's why we're number 16 in the world. But I agree with you, Pak, that on the overcapacity of electricity in Java, Bali, we have to think about what to do with it, right? So remember when I said in the beginning, maybe Indonesia can be the mecca of decarbonization. I'm not just saying for the sake of it, but I really believe in that. Because if we can go through this green industrial revolution, I think equality will also happen in Indonesia, because the energy below the ground, the critical materials, is actually on the eastern part of Indonesia. And then the same thing, actually, some of the energy above the ground for renewable energy with technology and money is actually mostly up there also in Sulawesi. And I think the biggest place is actually Papua, especially for wind energy. I'm not surprised over there, you can have 7 gigawatt of hydro and maybe the same for wind energy from our research, right? But coming back, what do we do as private sector? Because we have to do something, right? And we want to do something. How do we accelerate? How do we scale this? So I think one of the solutions would be to build net zero industrial park, right? Just a good name, but very simple. You build your energy to use it for your own good, and to do something, hopefully with value additions that can, export the materials outside. So for example, in South Sulawesi, there's a place called Banteng. People are telling us that wind energy in Indonesia, forget it. 75 megawatt here, 75 megawatt there, that's it, right? But with technology, I think 5 to 6 meters per second wind is good enough. And we are trying, right, to make 1 gigawatt in South Sulawesi with wind energy. And we want to use the energy to process the battery materials from nickel so that it can be basically powders to send to the West for battery materials. Just one example. You can do many, many other things. But the good thing about industrial park, net zero industrial park, is that we don't rely, as Bapak mentioned, to any state grid as much as we can. Constitutionally, we still have to work with them, but at the same time, you can work together while you use your own energy. So I think, for the young people over here, you should really be optimistic, not hopeful, optimistic, because this is something that the whole world needs us. How do you find nickel, copper? You gotta come here. How do you find, this geothermal, solar, wind? You gotta come somewhere. I think in 10 years, we can be net exporter of energy. And last thing I'm going to say, this electrification, this EV movement is huge, And not only for Indonesia, but for the world, right? People expect by 2030, 60% of EV, will be there. And they need these powders, right? So I think I'm actually optimistic.
Thank you. Well, it's time for another 2 questions. So before I talk, it's the guy from, you sir. Siapa lagi ya? Ada yang sebelah sana juga belum dapat bagian.
Ya, saya dulu ya. Terima kasih Bu Kak Moderator. Bang Anindya, apakah bus-busnya diimpor? Kalau ya, dari mana dan kapan kita bisa membuatnya 100%? Kepada Kak Citra, bebas emisi itu misalnya jalan kaki, naik bus biasa dengan naik bus listrik. Yang mana yang bebas emisi? Terima kasih.
Okay, second question first.
Hi, my name is Nafil. I'm a concerned Gen Z. I have a question for Anindya, Pak Anindya. So I just want to say that it is really encouraging and very hopeful that your company actually saved 5,500 tons of CO2 equivalents per year per 2.8 million kilometers. I guess my main concern and question is, how do you account for the leakage emission or the scope 3 emission? Because as far as I know, that lithium production is actually emitting a lot of greenhouse gas in the, in the upper hill of your supply chain. So I'm just wondering about your scope 3 emission, and if you do have that, do you have a independent validation and verification assessment that is being conducted by a third party? That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess we should answer the first question first. Who wants to go first? Mbak Citra?
Oke. Bebas. Jawabnya bahasa Inggris apa bahasa Indonesia?
Iya, jadi bahasa Indonesia.
Oh, bebas.
So the question was about, I guess, zero emission. Maybe you can, I think he is asking for you to explain a little bit more about that. Yeah.
I will try to answer it like a politician. So, bebas emisi, well, your question is actually very perfect for an English debate. What called bebas emisi or zero emission. Because if we talk about the ideal state of zero emissions, philosophically, meaning we should not do nothing because everything that we do depends on energy. We sit here with air conditioning, we come here with public transport, private transport. We use energy in all aspects of our lives, even when we're sleeping under aircon room. Or with other types that we use to sleep. So I think if we talk about zero emission as a system in Indonesia and what ISR have been done for the past more than 20 years is that we want to create an energy system and an economy system that is sourced from the least and zero emission possible energy sources that can contribute to economic growth, but without the needs to having coal or fossil fuel use in the process, and also without any harmful harmful procedures to the environment, because if we also talk about critical minerals and everything, it's still something that we need to consider the adverse impact of the production to the environment as well. So you can choose philosophically if you want zero emission without doing nothing, or we can do all of our effort to make sure that our lives, all activities that we do, productive activities, leisure activities, is all done with the least or zero emission possible.
Thank you. And the second question is for Pak Anin, I think.
Sure. Thank you. I'll try my best to answer the question without being too long. So I guess the first one, if I'm not mistaken, about the buses, are we going to localize it here? Yes. So the whole idea is that in the beginning, we can use the technology. In this case, we work with BYD. BYD is a company from Shenzhen, but it is the largest EV company in the world. Warren Buffett invested since 15 years ago, 25% of it, so it's an international company. So the idea to start with the CBU, meaning as it is, but this year, 35% of it is going to be done locally, and next year is going to be 60%. We hope, starting from the following year, 75% will be done here. The only thing we don't make it yet is the battery. So we're going to do everything except the battery for buses and truck. Now in Magelang, we are in the process of making one of the largest, if not the largest, electric buses and trucks. So yes, we're going to localize this whole thing, because I keep saying, if you look at this Indian drama, since 50 years ago, nobody probably was here 50 years ago, right? You will see a lot of Indian truck called Tata. The same Tata, 3 years ago, 10 years ago, they bought Jaguar Land Rover. So you can actually become big from making truck. There's no one OEM in Indonesia making truck, let alone buses. Now, coming to a very good question from the gentleman. So I guess the question is, look, you may be doing good with wind energy, processing nickel-based materials, but how do you mine? Do you use ESG metrics, science-based and all that? Look, we believe that this is something that we want to do over time, not overnight, right? And it is energy transition, right? So the first thing we want to do is the end-user device. So we want to try to fix that. We try, not going to be alone. We need a lot of collaborations with the electric buses and trucks, because they actually matter in terms of the CO2 emission. Then we're going to try to do, to solve the processing side using the renewable energy, because that's the one thing that a lot of people believe is needed. But the last thing we try to do is to do a responsible mining when we have the nickel mine in the process. So before you know it, the dream, right, this is not 1 year, 2 years, this is 20 years dream, is you have end-to-end supply chain that is zero emission, even increasing export from Indonesia to the world, whether the energy itself or the critical battery materials. Hopefully not too boring. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, next 2 questions, we still have time. Maybe I'll go over there in the back, yang pakai baju biru, boleh? Maju. Yang di sana udah pada ngantri, ya udah next aja. Next aja. Oke, yang di sini dulu mungkin tadi. Yang pakai baju biru di belakang sana. Ah, iya itu.
Thank you, distinguished panelists. My name is Felix Patrick, and I'm from FPCI Chapter Binus. My question is for Ms. Chitra. I know you're an avid reader of The Economist, so I will discuss a bit about a recent publication. The recent publication states that with electricity transition, we also have to revolutionize our electricity grid, where the report said that we will need $32 trillion to revolutionize our electricity grid. And you've mentioned a bit about transmission, and as we know with renewable energy intermittency in nature, and how will our electricity grid look in the future? Will it be more decentralized, centralized, and how can we deliver our potential which is often far away from the demand, how can we transport them? And lastly, with all of the technologies being developed, we all know there will be skepticism, as we can see with the movement of NIMBYism, not in my backyard, avoiding infrastructure development. As we know, it is necessary for us to have this grid, to have a modern smart grids. And in the future, how can we address that challenges? Thank you.
Okay, next question, thank you.
My question is for Professor Watanabe specifically. My name is Yoga from Pajajaran University, and I would like to ask a question. Based on the IEA reports, there are 3 things that we need more attention to achieve net zero emission. That is energy efficiency, renewable energy and electricity, and transportation electrification. So my question is, what is the best technology for energy efficiency available in the world, and which is suited for Indonesia? And how Indonesia can become an energy efficient nation? Thank you.
Thank you. So the first question from Binus to Mbak Citra, it's about electricity grid.
Yes, thank you. Patrick from Binus University. So you've done your homework. Kudos, you read research and how actually there are challenges to transform our power system. So based on our study that has been done in 2021 called Deep Decarbonization of Indonesia's Energy System, the Zero Emission 2051, we also put together a model on how to transform the power system, including that we need inter-island connection, the high voltage connection between islands, big islands in Indonesia especially, but also to promote more decentralized energy system. So based on our simulation, 73% of Indonesia's power system will come from utility scale solar. That's the big one in gigawatt order, and thus we need an inter-island high voltage connection to connect the production and the demand or the load. But also there are about 14% coming from rooftop solar or decentralized solar. And then especially for islands that are scattered across Indonesia, and it's also best for the condition that many of the productive activities are done at noon. So the solar electricity can be used directly to power the activities. And one of our analyses also mentioned about island-based renewable energy, because we are an archipelagic nation. So we are now doing research on how to power Nusa Penida with 100% renewable energy. Bali is very ambitious with their net zero emission. They want it to be in 2045. And we'll start the planning and analysis for Nusa Penida because it's quite small. It already has 3.5 megawatt of solar. And then we will need another 7 megawatt of renewable energy that can be of combination between wind, solar, probably mini hydro, and also storage to make sure that maybe Nusa Penida could be 100% renewable energy by 2035. And so we'll see if that can be implemented into real action. And for smart grids, I think this is one of the technological advances that we need to think about. Is about demand response. Demand response means the supply of the electricity not being delivered at certain times, but it can be adjusted to when demands are of high value. For example, if a house now using electricity, then only then the electricity production will be supplied to that house, and then at some other time then we will need to make sure that our activities using electricity are being minimized. So that's part of the technological advances that we can use so that no people. For example, now the peak load is at night, right? But with demand response, then we can predict and even adjust the system to make the activities done at, say, noon because a lot of solar energy are there, or at early morning when the wind power are of high production, so that we can match between the supply of quote-unquote intermittent energy with the use of them for the activities that we do.
Thank you, Mbak Citra. All right, the next question is for Professor Watanabe. It's about energy efficiency, which is a very good question. Is there or are there technologies available today for energy efficiency?
I think question, yes, thank you very much. As Pak Bakri mentioned that in Indonesia, electrification is very promising because as he mentioned that Indonesia has a very resource-rich country, so you can build up a supply chain from lithium and nickel and battery and transportation vehicles, starting with bus and commercial vehicles. So that's very promising, and actually it's already happening here. And I also like the phrase he mentioned that industrial revolution. Yeah, and industrial revolution and industrial transformation. And in Japanese case, we have some already existing industrial structure. But in Indonesia, it's quite different. And the challenge and challenge are there, but that is why industrial revolution are happening from here. I mean, renewable mecca. Indonesia is a renewable mecca. I believe so. So kind of leapfrog, and young entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, and businesses, and investors are coming here to utilize its own natural resources and technologies and network of stakeholders. It's very promising here, and Indonesia can spearhead, leapfrog the endeavor which other countries, including Japan, can learn. That's my opinion. Of course, in the transition process, we have to address many variety of things, but the target is very clear, I think.
Maybe Paleo can add. The question was actually about energy efficiency. So this is a question from an Unpad, mahasiswa Unpad ya. He read in the IEA report that there are 3 things to achieve a successful energy transition. So energy efficiency, renewable energy, especially in the electricity sector, and also electrification of the transportation system. So his question was about energy efficiency, whether there are any technologies or maybe approaches to ensure that Indonesia will become an energy efficient country.
Thank you, Barry. Thank you for the question, and probably just comment. The technologies are available. I think, but I think this also will need behavioral change. I think to become an energy efficient society, well, this may contradict because, well, there will be some people say that we haven't reached, certain kilowatt hour per capita. We're still far. Chitra mentioned that earlier. I think it's while we are if we are bringing climate crisis into the picture, there shouldn't be. I don't think or we need to review whether we need to reach that level. But that will need behavioral change. I mean, in energy efficient society, and this is now almost, not spoken. I mean, in this energy transition wave, this is almost not spoken because we are seeing as that our energy demand is still a bit low. We're going the Indonesia Emas 2045 is for us to become a developed country, and and developed country, one of the indicators is that certain energy per capita. I think this need to be reviewed. This need to be we need to rethink. I think there are ways to approach it differently, and I think it needs to be. I think for us, all of us, to actually think together what kind of society in terms of energy-wise that we want to aim. Technologies are there, available. I mean, there are, if we go to even housekeeping, there are ways to do, to make your house more efficient, to make your building more efficient. There is a demand-side technologies, demand-side approach. You can actually calculate your demand for a building and then adjust your energy supply to that. But I think as a country, we need to rediscuss, rethink what kind of energy per capita level that we want to aim. Thank you.
Thank you. Pak Anin, maybe you want to add?
Short one. I agree with Bapak. I think on top of energy efficiency, we should also think about energy productivity. What I'm talking about is, it also depends on what you do with the energy, right? I mean, it's one thing about saving the energy, but as long as the energy is coming from, renewable energy, what you do with it is very important. That's why when we talk a little bit about this industrialization, it looks like a big, big word, but it's actually just trying to be productive with the energy you use. And a lot of times, you use technology to do that. And what I would like to say, all this EV ecosystem is quite long, and you can participate in any way. We talked a little bit from the mining, maybe for bigger corporations, and then you have the processing, and then you have the battery technology. That's very rocket science. But you can have the moduling packaging, you can have the OEM, recycling, and all of them, you just have to use one nickel. Then we start again with copper and everything else. So I think all of you should be, proud and optimistic, and all of the panelists over here, are here to make sure that the next generation will do the call to action. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you, everyone. The time is actually up. It is a very interesting discussion and very important discussion for our energy transition. I'm sure there will be other events and other platforms for us to continue to discuss this, because we do need everyone's inputs. Like the panelists have stressed out here, is the fact that we need to collaborate, we need to work together, we need to participate and contribute. It's important for Indonesia to decide or make decision on which technologies are the best ones for our country. So those are some of the key takeaways, and we'll see, maybe we will become the Mecca of decarbonization, and we have to remain optimistic, not hopeful, but optimistic. And despite all the different views here, different arguments and opinions, but it means that we all care, and we should remain like that. We should care about our country and how we proceed into the future, especially to achieve net zero by 2050. So thank you. Before I conclude, I would like to request everyone to sign the FPCI petition at change.org/darurat iklim using the QR code on the screen. Maybe the team would like to show the QR code or not? Well, you can go to change.org/darurat iklim to sign the FPCI petition. And now I would like to invite the FPCI team to come on stage to present tokens of appreciation for the panelists, then followed by a group photo. Is that happening? All right. Maybe we all stand up. I get one too. Great, thank you. Well, thank you. Thank you, and we're supposed to turn our backs to the audience so we can take another photo, or? Yes?
Let's do selfie.
Okay, so we need to go, to the back of the audience.
Guys, 1, 2, 3. Very nice. Very nice. Okay.
Makasih Panin. Thank you so much. I'll see you at the next event.
Be in touch, Pak.
Yes, please. Yes, please visit us.
Yes, I will.
Pak Anin, makasih banyak.
makasih.
Iya.
Makasih.
Very good. Makasih.
Mohon perhatian Anda. Sesi penutup Rembuk Kebangsaan untuk Iklim akan segera dimulai. Bagi para peserta, diharapkan untuk menuju ke ruangan ballroom. Terima kasih.
Your attention, please.